one of the early parties who was really concerned about this pandemic. What was it about the factors that you were seeing in January, December, happening in China that really made you concerned and think this is going to be the thing we've all been worried about for so long?
Yeah. Well, our group had been following this activity in Wuhan, China, in the last week of December, when it really first made social media and made some evidence of being out there. And I've had an intense interest in coronavirus infections. I was quite involved with the U.S. government response here in 2003 when SARS actually happened. I have been very actively involved with MERS epidemics on the Arabian Peninsula, serving as an advisor to the royal family of the UAE. I've been on the Arabian Peninsula working on these, and I also was brought in to help Samsung Medical Center in Seoul, Korea, when they had a very large outbreak in Korea in 2015 from a returning passenger coming from the Arabian Peninsula back to Seoul. So I've really, you might say, had more than a passing interest in coronaviruses.
Yeah.
And what was really very clear to us in the beginning was when this was shown to be a coronavirus infection, and January 10th, the Chinese did publish that information, is that it was unlike SARS and MERS in that the vast majority of transmission with those two viruses occurred usually 5 or 6 days into an individual's illness. And that if you could identify those cases quickly enough, you could isolate them and really stop any additional transmission. Here, there was clear and compelling evidence of person-to-person transmission that was occurring well before people were clinically ill, if clinically ill at all. And we already saw cases beginning to move out of China even by January 20th when we put our statement out. So it had all the ingredients of being a respiratory transmitted infectious agent that asymptomatic people could transmit, or at least early in their clinical illness, and that it was a very severe disease. When you put that all together, for me, you didn't need to understand that, what was yet to come was not going to stay just in China, that it was going to go around the world.
Has it played out the way that you expected it to?
I think there are several things. One is the fact that none of us really knew how to interpret an unfolding coronavirus pandemic. We all were really preparing for influenza as a pandemic virus. And with that, we know we get waves. We see a first wave that cases peak typically within 4 to 8 weeks of its appearance. And then for reasons that have nothing to do with human intervention, case numbers drop precipitously, kind of forming a trough, and then will often come back some 2 to 3 months after that. And often the second big wave is the one that really has major impact. If you look at the last 10 influenza pandemics over the past 250 years, 2 started in the winter, 3 started in the spring, 2 in the summer, and 3 in the fall. Every one of them went through that same pattern. People may recall as recently as 2009 with H1N1, there we saw cases begin to show up in Mexico in mid-March. Cases peaked out late April, early May, dropped off through early part of the summer, and then came back with a huge second wave in late August through early October, well before vaccine arrived. And so we thought, could this be how this pandemic will unfold? And we actually put a document out from our center laying out scenarios, not models, but scenarios that said one could be like flu, another one could just be where it's kind of a slow burn, and the other one could be like a forest fire. Well, it's turned out to be like a forest fire. There are no waves. This will burn wherever there is wood to burn, i.e. humans. And so this is really like a coronavirus super fire. When you see very few cases in a given area, it has nothing to do necessarily that the fire won't come there. It's that the behaviors, the activities, surely have not supported transmission, but that will change. A good example I give you was in March, April, we heard over and over again, well, California is not being impacted all that much, and look at what's happened in New York. It surely must be for some reason, i.e. probably they lack public transportation. People aren't getting infected on subways in LA, etc. Well, then look what happened by July. California was on fire. And this is actually what happens with forest fires. They don't burn evenly. They don't burn everywhere all the time, but once they do ignite, they can take off. So I think that might have been a surprise, you would say. I would say it's more we just didn't know initially. And so today, this is just going to keep burning wherever it's not being suppressed. I think the second thing that, you know, it would be hard to imagine this. I had the good fortune to know the late Tom Clancy, the author. And I remember one night at dinner, he looked at me and he said, you know, Mike, the only difference between reality and fiction is that fiction has to make sense. And, you know, I think he's right. In this case, if you had tried to paint the political aspects of a pandemic on top of the very serious, challenging public health aspects and mix that into an entire global politic, you would never necessarily have thought that this would all happen. So I think that's the other surprise. The final one, which I have to say I'm still waiting for, is how will we have an exit strategy here? And I'm sure we'll talk about that. Will we develop vaccines that have durable immunity? Will we see people getting reinfected over and over again with this virus? How long will it take to get vaccine out? Once we have it, how well it works? So I think those questions yet to be answered will really determine how the rest of this plays out. And I think right now it's way too early to tell.